sons of Devaki by Lord Krishna. It is a Vedic custom that the junior members of the family should offer respects to the elders every morning. The children or disciples especially should offer their respects to their parents or a spiritual master in the morning. In pursuance of this Vedic principle, Lord Krishna and Balarama used to offer their obeisances to Krishna, to their parents, Vasudeva and Devaki. One day, after having returned from the sacrificial performances at Kurukshetra, when Lord Krishna and Balarama went to offer their respects to Vasudeva, Vasudeva took the opportunity to appreciate the exalted position of his two sons. Vasudeva had the opportunity to understand the position of Krishna and Balarama from the great sages who had assembled in the arena of the sacrifice. Not only did he hear from the sages, but on many occasions he actually experienced that Krishna and Balarama were not ordinary human beings, but were very extraordinary. Thus, he believed the words of the sages that his sons, Krishna and Balarama, were the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
With firm faith in his sons, he addressed them thus: My dear Krishna, you are Satchit Ananda Vigraha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And my dear Balaram, you are Shankarshana, the Master of all mystic power. Therefore, I have now understood that you are internal. Both of you are transcendental to this material manifestation and to its cause, the Supreme Person, Mahavishnu. You are the original controller of all. You are the resting place of this cosmos manifestation. You are the creator and you are also its creative ingredients. You are the master of this cosmos manifestation. And actually, this manifestation is created for your pastime only.
The different material phases that are manifest from the beginning to the end of the cosmos under different formulas of time are also yourself, because you are both the cause and effect of this manifestation. The two features of this material world, the predominator and the predominated, are also you, and you are the supreme transcendental controller who stands above them. Therefore, you are beyond the perception of our senses. You are the Supreme Soul, unborn and unchanging. You are not affected by the 6 kinds of transformations which occur in the material body. The wonderful varieties of this material world are also created by you, and you have entered as the Supersoul into all of them, down to the atom. You are the vital force of all these manifestations, and also their supreme cognition. As such, you are the maintainer of everything.
The vital force, the life principle in everything, and the creative force derived from it are not acting independently, but are dependent upon you, the Supreme Person behind these forces. Without your will, they cannot work. Material energy has no cognizance. It cannot act independently without being agitated by you. Because the material nature is dependent upon you, the living entities can only attempt to act, but without your sanction and will they cannot perform anything, but without your sanction and will, they cannot perform anything or achieve the results they desire.
The original energy is only an emanation from you. My dear Lord, the shining of the moon, the heat of fire, the rays of the sun, the glittering of stars, and the electric lightning, which are all manifested as very powerful, as well as the gravity of the mountains, and the energy and fragrance of the earth. All are different manifestations of you. The pure taste of water, the water itself, and the vital force which maintains all life are also features of your Lordship.
My dear Lord, although the forces of the senses, the mental power of thinking, willing, and feeling, and the strength, movement, and growth of the body appear to be performed by different movements of the airs within the body, but they are all ultimately manifestations of your energy. The vast expanse of the outer space rests in you. The vibration of the sky, its thunder, the supreme sound Omkara, and the arrangement of different words to distinguish one thing from another are all symbolic representations of you. The senses, the controllers of the senses, and the acquisition of knowledge, which is the purpose of the senses, as well as the subject matter of knowledge, all are you. The resolution of intelligence and the sharp memory of the living entity are also you. You are the egoistic principle of ignorance, which is the cause of this material world, the egoistic principle of passion, which is the cause of the senses, and the egoistic principle of goodness, which is the origin of the different controlling deities of this material world. The illusory energy of Maya, which is the cause of the conditioned soul's perpetual transmigration from one form to another, is you.
My dear Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are the original cause of all causes, exactly as the earth is the original cause of different kinds of trees, plants, and similarly varieties of manifestation. As the earth is present in everything, so you are present throughout this material manifestation as the super soul. You are the supreme cause of all causes, the internal principle. Everything, in fact, is manifestation of your one energy. The three qualities of material nature, sattva, raja, and tamas, and the result of their interaction are linked up with you by your agency of Yog Maya. They are supposed to be independent, but actually the total material energy rests upon you. The Supreme Soul, since you are the Super Soul, since you are the supreme cause of everything, the interactions of the material manifestation, birth, growth, exchange, transformation, deterioration, and analyzation are all absent in you. Your supreme energy, Yog Maya, is acting in Vrigdit manifestation, but because Yog Maya is your energy, you are therefore present in everything.
In the Bhagavad-Gita, this fact is very nicely explained in the 9th chapter, wherein the Lord says, "In my impersonal form, I am spread all over the material energy. Everything is resting in me, but I am not there." This very statement is also given by Vasudev. To say that the Lord is not present everywhere means that he is aloof from everything, although his energy is acting everywhere. This can be understood by a crude example. In a big establishment, the energy or the organization of the supreme boss is working in every nook and corner of the business. But that does not mean the original proprietor is present there. Although in every department, The presence of the proprietor is felt by the workers. The physical presence of the proprietor in every department is a formality only. Actually, his energy is working everywhere. Similarly, the omnipresence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is felt in the action of his energies. Therefore, the philosophy of inconceivable, simultaneous oneness with and difference from the Supreme Lord is confirmed everywhere. The Lord is one, but his energies are diverse.
Vasudeva said, "This material world is like a great flowing river, and its waves are the three material modes of nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. This material body, as well as the senses, the faculties of thinking, feeling, and willing, and the stages of distress, happiness, attachment, and lust, all are different products of these three stuck together. These three qualities of nature. The foolish person who cannot realize your transcendental identity above all these material reactions continues in the entanglement of fruitive activities and is subjected to the continuous process of birth and death without a chance of being freed."
This is confirmed in a different way by the Lord in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. There it is said that anyone who knows the appearance and activities of the Supreme Lord Krishna is freed from the clutches of material nature and goes back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, Krishna's transcendental name, form, activities, and qualities are not products of this material nature. My dear Lord, Vasudeva continued, despite all these defects of the conditioned soul, if somehow or other comes in contact with devotional service, he achieves the civilized human form of body with developed consciousness and thereby becomes capable of executing further progress in devotional service. And yet, illusioned by the external energy, people generally do not utilize the advantage of the human form of life. Thus, they miss the chance of eternal freedom and unnecessarily spoil the progress they have made after thousands of births.
In the bodily concept of life, due to false egotism, one is attached to the offspring of the body, and thus everyone in conditioned life is entrapped by false relationships and false affection. The whole world is moving under this false impression and suffering material bondage. I know that neither of you is my son. Both of you are the original chief and progenitor, the personality of Godhead, the Purusha with Pradhana. But you have appeared on the surface of this globe to minimize the burden of the world by killing the Kshatriya kings who are unnecessarily increasing their military strength. You have already informed me about this in the past. My dear Lord, you are the shelter of the surrendered soul, the supreme well-wisher of the meek and humble. I am therefore taking your shelter of lotus feet, which alone can give one liberation from the entanglement of material existence.
For a long time, I have simply considered this body to be myself. And although you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I have considered you my son. My dear Lord, at the very moment when you first appeared in the Kamsa's prison's house, you informed me that you were the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that you had descended for the protection of the principle of religion as well as destruction of the unfaithful Although unborn, you descended in every millennium to execute your mission. My dear Lord, as in the sky there are many forms appearing and disappearing, you also appear in many internal forms and then disappear. Who therefore can understand your pastimes or the mystic of your appearance and disappearance? Our only business should be to glorify your supreme greatness.
When Vasudeva was addressing his divine sons in that way, Lord Krishna and Balaram were smiling because they are very affectionate to their devotees. They accepted all the appreciation of Vasudeva with a kindly, smiling attitude. Krishna then confirmed all of Vasudeva's statements as follows. My dear father, whatever you may say, we are, after all, your sons. What you have said about us is certainly a highly philosophical understanding of spiritual knowledge. I accept it in toto without exception. Vasudeva was in the complete perfection of life in considering Lord Krishna and Balaram to be his sons. But because the sages assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra had spoken about the Lord as the supreme cause of everything, Vasudeva simply repeated it out of his love for Krishna and Balaram. Lord Krishna did not wish to detract from his relationship with Vasudeva as father and son. Therefore, in the very beginning of his reply, he accepted the fact that he is the eternal son of Vasudeva and that Vasudeva is the eternal father of Krishna. After this, Lord Krishna informed his father of the spiritual identity of all living entities. He continued, My dear father, everyone and everything, including me and my brother Balaram, as well as all the inhabitants of the city of Dwaraka and the whole cosmic manifestation, are exactly as you have already explained, but all of us are also qualitatively one.
Lord Krishna intended for Vasudeva to see everything with the vision of a Mahabhagavat, a first-class devotee, who sees that all living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and that the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. In fact, every living entity has a spiritual identity, but in contact with material existence, one becomes influenced by the material modes of nature. He becomes covered by the concept of bodily life, forgetting that his spirit soul is of the same quality as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One mistakenly considers one individual to be different from another simply because of their material bodily coverings. Because of differences between bodies, the spirit soul appears before us differently.
Lord Krishna then gave a nice example in terms of the 5 material elements. The total material elements, namely the sky, air, fire, water, and earth, are present in everything in the material world, whether in an earthen pot, or in a mountain, or in the trees, or in an earring. These 5 elements are present in everything in different proportions and quantities. A mountain is a gigantic form of the combination of these 5 elements, and small earthen pot is made of the same elements but in smaller quantity. Therefore, all material items, although in different shapes or different quantities, are of the same ingredients. Similarly, the living entities, beginning from Lord Krishna and including millions of Vishnu forms, and also the living entities in different forms from Lord Brahma down to the small ant, are all of the same spiritual quality. Some are great in quantity and some are small, but qualitatively they are of the same nature. It is therefore confirmed in the Upanishads that Krishna, or the Supreme Lord, is the chief among all living entities and that he maintains them and supplies them with all necessities of life. Anyone who knows this philosophy is in perfect knowledge. The Vedic version, Tat Tvam Asi, thou art the same, means not that everyone is God, but that everyone is qualitatively of the same nature as God.
After hearing Krishna speak the entire philosophy of spiritual life in an abbreviated summation, Vasudeva was exceedingly pleased with his son. Being thus elated, he could not speak but remained silent. In the meantime, Devaki, the mother of Lord Krishna, sat by the side of her husband. Previously, she had heard that Krishna and Balarama were so kind to their teacher that they had brought back the teacher's dead son from the clutches of the superintendent of death, Yamaraja. Since she had heard of this incident, she had also been thinking of her own sons who were killed by Kamsa, and while remembering them, she was overwhelmed with grief.
Out of compassion for her dead sons, Devaki appealed to Lord Krishna and Balaram thus, My dear Balaram, your very name suggested that you give all pleasure and all strength to everyone. Your unlimited potency is beyond the reach of our mind and words. And my dear Krishna, you are the master of all mystic yogis. I know that you are the master of the Prajapatis, like Brahma and his assistant, and you are the original personality of Godhead Narayana. I also know for the certain that you have descended to annihilate all kinds of miscreants who have been misled in course of time. They have lost control of their mind and senses, have fallen from the quality of goodness, and have deliberately neglected the direction of the revealed scriptures by living a life of extravagance and impudence. You have descended on earth to minimize the burden of the world by killing such miscreant rulers. My dear Krishna, I know that Mahavishnu, who is lying in the causeless ocean of the cosmos manifestation and who is the source of all his creation, is simply an expansion of your planetary portion. The creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this cosmos manifestation are affected only by your planetary portion. I therefore take shelter of you without reservation. I have heard that when you wanted to reward your teacher Sandipani Muni and he asked you to bring back his dead son, you and Balaram immediately brought him from the custody of Yamaraj, although he had been dead for a very long time. By this act, I understand you to be the supreme master of all mystic yogis. I therefore ask you to fulfill my desire in the same way. In other words, I am asking you to bring back all my sons who were killed by Kamsa. Upon your bringing them back, and my heart will be content, and it will be great pleasure for me just to see them once.
After hearing their mother speak in this way, Lord Balaram and Krishna immediately called for the assistance of Yogamaya and started for the lower planetary system known as Sutala. Formerly, in his incarnation of Vamana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead had been satisfied by the king of the demons, Bali Maharaj, who donated to him everything he had. Bali Maharaj was then given the whole Sutala for his residence and kingdom. Now, when this great devotee, Bali Maharaj, saw that Lord Balaram and Krishna had come to his planet, he immediately merged in an ocean of happiness. As soon as he saw Lord Krishna and Balaram in his presence, he and all his family members stood up from their seats and bowed down at the lotus feet of the Lords. Bali Maharaj offered Lord Krishna and Balaram the best seat he had in his possession, and when both lords were seated comfortably, he began to wash their lotus feet. He then sprinkled the water on his head, on the heads of his family members. The water used to wash the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram can purify even the greatest demigods, such as Lord Brahma.
Hare Krishna. After this, Bali Maharaj brought valuable garments, ornaments, sandal boots, pulp, betel nuts, lamps, and various nectarian foods. And along with his family members, he worshipped the Lord according to the regulative principles and offered his riches and body unto their lotus feet. King Bali was feeling such transcendental pleasure, and that he repeatedly grasped the lotus feet and kept them on his chest. And sometimes he put them on the top of his head. In this way, he felt transcendental bliss. Tears of love and affection began to flow from his eyes, and all his bodily hairs stood on end. He began to offer prayers to the Lords in a voice which choked up intermittently.
My Lord Balaram, you are the original Anantadev. You are so great that Anantadev Sesha and other transcendental forms have originally emanated from you. And you, Lord Krishna, are the original personality of Godhead with an eternal form that is all blissful and full of complete knowledge. You are the creator of the whole world. You are the original initiator and propounder of the systems of Jnana Yoga and Bhakti-yoga. You are the Supreme Brahman, the original personality of Godhead. I therefore, with all respect, offer my obeisances unto both of you. My dear lords, it is very difficult for the living entities to get to see you. Yet when you are merciful upon your devotees, you are easy for them to see. As such, only out of your causeless mercy have you agreed to come here and be visible to us, who are generally influenced by the qualities of ignorance and passion.
My dear Lord, we belong to Daitya or demon category. The demons or demoniac persons, the Gandharvas, the Siddhas, the Vidyadharas, the Charnas, the Yakshas, the Rakshas, the Pichashas, the Ghors, and the Hobgoblins are by nature incapable of worshipping you or becoming your devotees. Instead of becoming your devotees, they are simply impediments on the path of devotion. But you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, representing all the Vedas, and are situated in the mode of uncontaminated goodness. Your position is always transcendental. For this reason, some of us, although born of modes of passion and ignorance, have taken shelter of your lotus feet and have become devotees. Some of us are actually pure devotees, and some of us have taken shelter of your lotus feet because we desire to gain something from devotion. By your causeless mercy, only are we demons in direct contact with your personality. This contact is not possible even for the great demigods. No one knows how you act through your Yog Maya potency. Even demigods cannot calculate the expense of activities of your internal potency. So, how is it possible for us to know it? I therefore place my humble prayers before you. Please be kind to me, who am fully surrendered unto you, and favor me with your causeless mercy, so that I may simply remember your lotus feet, birth after birth. My only ambition is that I may live alone, just like the Paramhans who travel alone here and there in great peace of mind, depending simply upon your lotus feet. I also desire that if I have to associate with anyone, I may associate only with your pure devotees and no one else. For your pure devotees are always well wishers of all living entities.
My dear Lord, you are the Supreme Master and Director of the whole world. Please, therefore, engage me in your service and let me thus become free from all materialistic contaminations. You can purify me in that way, because if someone engages himself in the loving service of your Lordship, he is immediately freed from all kinds of regulative principles enjoined in the Vedas. The word Paramahamsa mentioned here means the supreme swan. It is said that the swan can draw milk from a mixture of milk and water. It can take only the milk portion and reject the watery portion. Similarly, a person who can draw out the spiritual portion from this material world and who can live alone, depending only on the Supreme Spirit, not on the material world, is called a Paramhamsa. When one achieves the Paramhamsa platform, he is no longer under the regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions. A Paramhamsa accepts only the association of pure devotees and rejects the others, who are too much materially addicted. In other words, those who are materially addicted cannot understand the value of Paramhamsa, but those who are fortunate, who are advanced in a spiritual sense, take shelter of the Paramhamsa and successfully complete the mission of human life.
After Lord Krishna heard the praise of Bali Maharaj, he spoke as follows: My dear king of the demons, in the millennium of Swambhav Manu, the Prajapati, known as the Maharishi, begot 6 sons, all demigods in the womb of his wife Urna. Once upon a time, Lord Brahma became captivated by beauty of his daughter and was following her, impelled by 6 desires. At that time, these 6 demigods looked at the action of Lord Brahma with abhorrence. This criticism of Brahma's action by the demigods constituted a great offense on their part, and for this reason they were condemned to take birth as the sons of the demon Hiranyakashipu. These sons of Hiranyakashipu were thereafter put into the womb of Mother Devaki, and as soon as they took their birth, Kamsa killed them one after another. My dear king of the demon, Mother Devaki is very anxious to see these 6 dead sons again, and she is very much aggrieved on the account of their early death at the hand of Kamsa. I know that all of them are living with you. I have decided to take them with me to pacify my mother Devaki. After seeing my mother, all the 6 of these conditioned souls will be liberated, and thus in the great pleasure they will be transferred to their original planet. The names of these 6 conditioned souls are as follows: Samara, Udagata, Parisvanga, Parpatraha, Kasturdharta, and Charni. They will be restrained in their former position as demigod.
after thus informing the king of the demons, Krishna stopped speaking, and Bali Maharaj understood the Lord's purpose. He duly worshipped the Lord, and thereafter Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram took away the 6 conditioned souls and returned to the city of Dwaraka, where Lord Krishna presented them as little babies before his mother Devaki. Mother Devaki was overwhelmed with joy and was so ecstatic in motherly feeling that milk immediately began to flow from her breasts, and she fed the babies with great satisfaction. She took them on her lap again and again, smelling their heads and thinking, "I have gotten my lost children back." For the time being, she was overpowered by the energy of Vishnu, and in great motherly affection, she enjoyed the company of her lost children.
The milk from the breast of Devaki was transcendental nectar because the same milk had been sucked by Lord Krishna. As such, the babies who sucked the breast of Devaki, which had touched the baby of Lord Krishna, immediately become self-realized persons. The babies therefore began to offer their obeisances unto Lord Krishna, Balram, and their father Vasudev, and their mother Devaki. After this, they were immediately transferred to their respective heavenly planets. After they departed, Devaki was stunned with wonder that her dead children had came back and had again been transferred to their respective planets. She could adjust the event only by thinking that the Lord Krishna can perform anything wonderful in his pastimes because his potencies are all inconceivable. Without accepting this, the inconceivable, unlimited potencies of the Lord, one cannot understand that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Soul. By his unlimited potencies, he performs unlimited pastimes, and no one can describe them in full. Nor can anyone know them all. Sutta Goswami speaking, Srimad Bhagavatam, before the sages of Naimisharanya, headed by Sonak Rishi, gave his verdict in this connection as follows.
Great sages, please understand that the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna are all eternal. They are not ordinary narrations of historical incidents. Such narrations are identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Anyone, therefore, who hears such narrations of the Lord's pastimes is immediately freed from the contamination of material existence. I'll read that again. Anyone, therefore, who hears such narrations of the Lord's pastimes is immediately freed from the contamination of material existence. And those who are pure devotees enjoy these narrations as nectar entering into their ears. Such narrations were spoken by Shukadeva Goswami, the exalted son of Vyasadeva, and anyone who hears them, as well as anyone who repeats them for the hearing of others, becomes Krishna conscious. And only the Krishna conscious persons are eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 85th chapter of Krishna, Spiritual Instruction for Vasudeva, and the return of the 6 dead sons of Devaki by Lord Krishna.
We'll start with the next chapter, chapter 86. The kidnapping of Subhadra and Lord Krishna's visiting Shrutadev and Bahulasva. After hearing of the incidents described in the last chapter King Parikshit became more inquisitive to hear about Krishna and his pastimes, and thus he inquired from Shukadev Goswami how his grandmother Subhadra was kidnapped by his grandfather Arjuna at the instigation of Lord Krishna. King Parikshit was very eager to learn how his grandfather kidnapped and married his grandmother. Thus, Shukadev Goswami began to narrate the story as follows. Once upon a time, King Parikshit's grandfather, Arjuna, the great hero, was visiting several holy places of pilgrimage, and while thus traveling all over, he happened to come to Prabhashetra. In Prabhashetra, he heard the news that Lord Balram was negotiating the marriage of Subhadra, the daughter of Arjuna's maternal uncle, Vasudeva. Although her father Vasudeva and her brother Krishna were not in agreement with him, Balram was in favor of marrying Subhadra to Duryodhana. Arjuna, however, desired to gain Subhadra's hand himself. As he thought of Subhadra and her beauty, Arjuna became more and more captivated with the idea of marrying her, and with a plan in mind, he dressed himself like a Vaishnav sannyasi, carrying Tridanda in his hand.
The Mayavadi sannyasis take one danda or one rod, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasis take 3 dandas or 3 rods. The 3 rods or tridanda indicate that a Vaishnava sannyasi vows to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead with his body, mind, and words. The system of Tridanda Sannyasa has been in existence for a long time, and the Vaishnava sannyasis are called Tridandis, or sometimes Tridandi Swamis or Tridandi Goswamis. Sannyasis are generally meant to travel all over the country for preaching work, but during the 4 months of the rainy season in India, from July through October, they do not travel but take shelter in one place and remain there without moving. This non-movement of the sannyasi is called Chaturmasya Vrata. When a sannyasi stays in one place for these 4 months, the local inhabitants of that place take advantage of his presence and to become spiritually advanced.
Arjuna, in the dress of Tridandi sannyasi, remained in the city of Dwarka for 4 months of the rainy season, devising a plan whereby he could get Subhadra as his wife. None of the inhabitants of Dwarka, including Lord Balram, could recognize the sannyasi to be Arjuna. Therefore, all of them offered their respect and obeisances to the sannyasi without knowing the actual situation. One day, Lord Balram invited this particular sannyasi to lunch at his home. Balramji very respectfully offered him all kinds of palatable dishes, and the so-called sannyasi was eating sumptuously. While eating at the home of Balramji, Arjuna was simpering at the beautiful Subhadra, who was very enchanting to the great hero and the king. Out of love for her, Arjuna's eyes brightened, and he looked at her with glittering eyes. Arjuna decided that somehow or other he would achieve Subhadra as his wife, and his mind became agitated on account of this strong desire. Arjuna, the grandfather of Maharaj Parikshit, was himself extraordinarily beautiful, and his bodily structure was very attractive to Subhadra, who decided within her mind that she would accept only Arjuna as her husband. As a simple girl, she was smiling with great pleasure looking at Arjuna. Thus, Arjuna also became more and more attractive by her. In this way, Subhadra decided herself to Arjuna, dedicated herself to Arjuna, and he resolved to marry her by any means. He then became observed 24 hours a day in thought of how he could get Subhadra as his wife. He was affected with the thought of getting Subhadra and had not a moment of peace of mind.
Once upon a time, Subhadra, seated on a chariot, came out of the palace fort to see the gods in the temple. Arjuna took this opportunity and, with the permission of Vasudev and Devaki, he kidnapped her. After getting on Subhadra's chariot, he prepared himself for a fight. Taking up his bow and holding off with his arrows, the soldiers ordered to check him. Arjuna took Subhadra away. While Subhadra was thus being kidnapped by Arjuna, her relatives and family members began to cry, but still he took her, just as a lion takes his prey and departs. When it was disclosed to Balaram that the so-called sannyasi was Arjuna, who had planned such a device simply to take away Subhadra, and that he had actually taken her, he became very angry. Just as the waves of the ocean become agitated on a full moon day, Lord Balaram became greatly disturbed.
Lord Krishna was in favor of Arjuna. Therefore, along with other members of the family, he tried to pacify Balaram by falling at his feet and begging him to pardon Arjuna. Krishna convinced Lord Balaram that Subhadra was attached to Arjuna, and thus Balaram became pleased to know that she wanted Arjuna as her husband. The matter was settled, and to please the newly married couple, Lord Balaram arranged to send a dowry consisting of an abundance of riches, including elephants, chariots, horses, maidservants, and menservants and maidservants. Maharaj Parikshit was very eager to hear more about Krishna, and so, after finishing the narration of Arjuna's kidnapping, Subhadra, Shukdev Goswami began to narrate another story as follows.
There was a householder Brahmana in the city of Mithila, the capital of the kingdom of Videha. This Brahmana, whose name was Shrutadev, was a great devotee of Lord Krishna. Because he was fully Krishna conscious and always engaged in the service of the Lord, he was completely peaceful in mind and detached from all material attraction. He was very learned and had no desire other than to be fully situated in Krishna consciousness. Although in the order of householder life, he never took great pains to earn anything for his livelihood. He was satisfied with whatever he could achieve without much endeavor, and somehow or other he lived in that way. Every day he would get the necessities of life in just the quantity required and not more. That was his identity. The Brahmana had no desire to get more than what he needed, and thus he was peacefully executing the regulative principles of a Brahmana's life, as enjoined in the revealed scriptures. Fortunately, the king of Mithila was as good a devotee as the Brahmana. The name of this famous king was Bahulashva. He was very well established in his reputation as a good king, and he was not at all ambitious to extend his kingdom for the sake of sense gratification. As such, both the Brahmana and King Bahulashva remained pure devotees of Lord Krishna in Mithila.
Since Lord Krishna was very merciful toward these two devotees, King Bahulashva and the Brahman Shrutadev, he one day asked his driver, Daruka, to take his chariot into the capital city of Mithila. Lord Krishna was accompanied by the great sages Narad, Vamadev, Atri, Vyasadev, Parasurma, Asita, Aruni, Shukadev, Brahaspati, Kanava, Maitreya, Chanvana, and others. Lord Krishna and the sages passed through many villages and towns, and everywhere the citizens would receive them with great respect and offer them articles in worship. To the citizens who came to see the Lord and all the assembled sages, it seemed as though the sun were present along with his various satellite planets. In that journey, Lord Krishna and the sages passed through the kingdoms of Anartha, Dhanva, Kurjangala, Kanaka, Matsya, Panchala, Kunti, Madhu, Kekya, Kosala, and Anna. And thus, all the citizens of these places, both men and women, could see Lord Krishna face. In this way, they enjoyed celestial happiness with open hearts full of love and affection for the Lord. And when they saw the face of the Lord, it seemed to them that they were drinking nectar through their eyes. When they saw Krishna, all the ignorant misconceptions of their lives dissipated. When the Lord passed through the various countries and the people came to visit him, simply by glancing over them, the Lord would bestow all good fortune upon them and liberate them from all kinds of ignorance. In some places, the demigods would join with the human beings, and the glorification of the Lord would cleanse all directions of all inauspiciousness things. In this way, Lord Krishna gradually reached the kingdom of Videha.
When the citizens received the news of the Lord's arrival, they all felt unlimited happiness and came to welcome him, taking gifts in their hands to offer. As soon as they saw Lord Krishna, their hearts immediately blossomed in transcendental bliss, just like lotus flowers upon the rising of the sun. Previously, they had simply heard the names of the great sages, but had never seen them. Now, by the mercy of the Lord Krishna, they had the opportunity of seeing both the great sages and the Lord himself. King Bahulashva and the Brahmana Shrutadeva, knowing well that the Lord had come there just to grace them with favor, immediately fell at the Lord's lotus feet and offered their respects. With folded hands, the king and the Brahmana each simultaneously invited Lord Krishna and all the sages to his home. In order to please both of them, Lord Krishna expanded himself into two and went to the houses of each one of them. Yet neither the king nor the Brahmana could understand that the Lord had gone to the house of the other. Both thought that the Lord had gone only to his own house, but that he and his companions were present in both houses. Although both the Brahmana and the king thought he was present in one house only, is another opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This opulence is described in the revealed scriptures as Vaibhava Prakasha. When Lord Krishna married 16,000 wives, he expanded himself into 16,000 forms, each one of them as powerful as he himself. Similarly in Vrindavana, when Brahma stole Krishna's calves and cowherd boys, Krishna expanded himself into many new calves and boys.
Bhuvanasava, the king of Vidhi, was very intelligent and was perfect gentleman. He was astonished that so many great sages, along with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, were personally present in his house. He knew perfectly well that conditioned souls engaged in worldly affairs cannot be 100% pure, whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead can, and his pure devotee are always transcendental to the worldly continuation. Therefore, when he found that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and all the great sages were at his home, he was astonished, and he began to thank Lord Krishna for his causeless mercy. Feeling very much obliged and wanting to receive his guest to the best of his ability, he called for nice chairs and cushions, and Lord Krishna, along with his all the sages, sat down very comfortably at that time. The king Balasura's mind was very restless, and because of any problems, but because of a great anxiety of the love and devotional. His heart was filled with love and affection for the Lord and his associate, and his eyes were filled with tears of anxiety. He washed the feet of the divine guest, and afterward he and his family members sprinkled the water on their own heads. After this, he offered the guest nice flower garlands, sandalwood pumps, incense, new garments, ornaments, lamb, cows, and bulls. In a manner just befitting his royal position, he worshipped each one of them in this way. When all had been fed sumptuously and were sitting very comfortably, Balsura came before Lord Krishna and caught his lotus feet. He placed him on his lap, and while massaging the feet with his hands, began to speak about the glories of Lord in a sweet voice.
My dear Lord, you are the super soul of all living entities, and as the witness within the heart, you are cognizant of everyone's activities. Thus, we are duty bound to always think of your lotus feet so that we can remain in a secure position and not deviate from your eternal service. As a result of our continuous remembrance of your lotus feet, you have kindly visited my place personally to favor me with your causeless mercy. We have heard, my dear Lord, that by your various statements you confirm your pure devotees to be more dear to you than Lord Balaram or your concerned servitor, the goddess of fortune. Your devotees are dearer to you than your first son, Lord Brahma, and I am sure that you have so kindly visited my place in order to prove your divine statement. I cannot imagine how people can be godless and demonic even after knowing of your causeless mercy and affection for your devotees who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. How can people who know of these things forget your lotus feet?
My dear Lord, it is known to us that you are so kind and liberal that when a person leaves everything just to engage in Krishna consciousness, you sometimes give yourself in exchange for that unalloyed service. You have appeared in the Yadu dynasty to fulfill your mission of reclaiming all conditioned souls rotting in the sinful activities of material existence, and this appearance is already famous all over the world. My dear Lord, you are the ocean of unlimited mercy, love, and affection. Your transcendental form is full of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. You can attract everyone's heart by your beautiful form as Shama Sundar, Krishna. Your knowledge is unlimited, and to teach all people how to execute devotional service, you have sent your incarnation, Narayan, who is engaged in severe austerities and penances at Badri Narayan. Kindly, therefore, accept my humble obeisances at your lotus feet. My dear Lord, I beg to request you and your companions, the great sages and brahmanas, to remain at my place at least for a few days, so that the family of the famous King Nimi may be sanctified by the dust of your lotus feet. Lord Krishna could not refuse the request of his devotee, and thus he remained there for a few days with the sages to sanctify the city of Mithila and all its citizens.
Meanwhile, the Brahman Shrutadev, simultaneously receiving Lord Krishna and his associates at his home, was constantly overwhelmed with joy. After offering his guests nice sitting places, the Brahman began to dance, weaving around his wrap. Shrutadev, being not at all rich, offered only mattresses, wooden planks, straw carpets, and so on to his distinguished guest, Lord Krishna and the sages, but he welcomed them to the best of his ability. He spoke very highly of the Lord and the sages, and he and his wife washed the feet of each one of them. After this, he took the water and sprinkled it all over the members of his family, and although the Brahman appeared very poor, he was at that time most fortunate. While Shrutadev was welcoming Lord Krishna and his associates, he simply forgot himself in transcendental joy. After welcoming the Lord and his companions according to his ability, he brought fruits, incense, scented water, scented clay, tulasi leaves, kusha straw, and lotus flowers. They were not costly items and could be secured very easily, but because they were offered with devotional love, Lord Krishna and his associates accepted them gladly. The Brahman's wife cooked simple food like rice, dal, and Lord Krishna and his followers were very pleased to accept them because they were offered in devotional love. When Lord Krishna and his associates were fed in this way, the Brahman Shrutadev was thinking, "Thus I have fallen into the deep, dark well of householder life, and am the most unfortunate person. How has it become possible that Lord Krishna, who is Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his associates, the great sages, whose very presence makes a place as sanctified as a pilgrimage site, have agreed to come to my place?" While the Brahman was thinking in this way, the guests finished their lunch and sat back very comfortably. At that time, the Brahman Shrutadev and his wife, children, and other relatives appeared there to render service to the distinguished guests. While touching the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, the Brahman began to speak. Ma,
Should I speak more? Okay, yeah. Okay, Hare Krishna. So this concludes our weekly Krishna book reading session to Srila Prabhupada. And I would like to thank all the devotees who were present for this reading, and the next reading will be conducted on the next Sunday. So before leaving, we'd like to humbly and respectfully offer our obeisances unto Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Bracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. We also offer respectful obeisances unto the devotees. Vancha kalpataruvescha kripa sindhuvaevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namaha. Hari Bol.